Tonight, our special transmission as Israel's war enters its 10th month with no end in sight. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Zahra Sayed. Today is the 276th day since the onset of Israel's war. The war has entered its 10th month with no signs of an end to the hostilities. The Palestine Health Ministry reports in the past 24 hours, Israel's military attacks have killed at least 40 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. 75 have been injured. The Israeli army has announced a ground operation in Gaza City. The operation will be carried out in sites like the headquarters of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Civilians, including those who sought refuge near United Nations Agency headquarters, are trapped amidst bombings and ground incursions. Witnesses fleeing to Wadi Gaza recount horrifying scenes of bodies in the streets. They say the corpses are inaccessible to paramedics. The Gaza Civil Emergency Service says rescue efforts are hindered by ongoing offensives in multiple suburbs. The Israeli military says it has killed over 30 Palestinian fighters in Rafah. It says during the operation it has destroyed several tunnels and confiscated weapons. The death toll from Israel's war continues to mount at an alarming rate. At the time of writing, at least 38,193 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli attacks. A revised report by the United Nations estimates another 10,000 civilians are buried under the rubble. 87,903 Palestinians are injured. Israel's death toll from Hamas's attacks stands at 1,139. Israel is accused of genocide at the International Court of Justice. The court has ruled that Israel immediately halt its military operations in Rafah. Israeli forces have targeted the Al-Juni school in Al-Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza. The attacks have killed at least 16 civilians. 75 have been injured, including children. Israel claims the school was being used by Hamas fighters. However, the allegations lack evidence. The bombing adds to a series of attacks on schools run by the United Nations. In the past 9 months of war, 80% of schools and universities have either been damaged or destroyed. The international community condemns the targeting of schools. Some experts are calling the action scholasticide. The term refers to the systematic destruction of education infrastructure. Last month, Israeli soldiers set ablaze the remaining parts of the library at Al-Aqsa University. They then photographed themselves sitting in front of the burning books. A senior Hamas official has refuted claims that the group has dropped a crucial demand in renewed ceasefire negotiations. Speaking to Western media, the official says that Hamas still demands a complete cessation of hostilities in Israel. The renewed negotiations aimed for a phased approach. Initially, a 6-week ceasefire would release Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. It will allow for humanitarian aid to enter the enclave. The deal would see around 600 trucks of humanitarian aid entering Gaza daily. This would include 50 fuel trucks, with half of them bound for the hard-hit areas in northern Gaza. The subsequent phases would focus on more prisoner exchanges and long-term reconstruction. Hamas is demanding written assurances that negotiations will continue towards a permanent ceasefire. Israel says Hamas is still holding about 120 hostages. About a third of them are believed to be dead by Israeli attacks. The Israeli Prime Minister has confirmed that the Mossad's chief paid a visit to Qatar to resume mediation talks. His office, however, says that the gaps between the parties remain. Reports are emerging that Israeli forces have executed 4 Palestinian prisoners near the Karm Abu Salam crossing. The prisoners were detained for 4 days and did not have a trial. The news comes after Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir recently advocated for the execution of Palestinian prisoners. Eyewitnesses say the prisoners were executed soon after being released. Photos of the victims show signs of torture. Their hands were handcuffed even after execution. The Palestinian Prisoners Club condemns the alleged executions. The organization says the prisoners were tortured and mistreated during their detention. It says there is a pattern of abuse and neglect in Israeli prisons. This is especially true for the notorious D team in camp. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister has urged Western nations to impose sanctions on Israel for committing war crimes in Gaza. Prince Faisal bin Farhan's comments came during the meeting of the European Council on Foreign Relations in Madrid, Spain. Bin Farhan accused Israeli forces of daily violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza. He is calling on the European nations to hold Israel accountable for restricting humanitarian access to civilian population in the besieged enclave. Bin Farhan says there is international consensus on a two-state solution and Israel's settlement expansions as undermining this goal. Bin Farhan's comments are the kingdom's strongest condemnation of Israel's offensive in Gaza so far. The UK's new Justice Secretary is facing opposition from Israeli lobby groups. Shabana Mahmoud is known for her support for Palestinian rights. Mahmoud has criticized Israel's actions, however, she had also abstained from a Gaza ceasefire vote. Palestinian rights activists question her commitment to the Palestinian cause. Mahmoud has won re-election in her constituency of Birmingham Ladywood against a Free Palestine independent candidate Ahmed Yaqub. Her appointment comes amidst Labour's landslide victory in the UK elections. Mahmoud represents a heavy Muslim constituency. She remains a focal point in Labour's approach to Middle East policy. The party has faced a decline from Muslim voters for its support for Israel. The Canadian government has revealed the head of the Canadian Human Rights Commission disclosed his alias used for social media posts during his security assessment. Birju Dadani has recently been appointed to the post. Dadani is the first Muslim to lead the Canadian Human Rights Commission. National Jewish organizations accused Dadani of anti-Semitic social media posts made under the name Mujahid Dadani. They also say Dadani spoke on a panel in the United Kingdom alongside a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir in 2015. Hizb ut-Tahrir is an Islamic fundamentalist group. There are calls for his appointment to be rescinded. Dadani says he was unaware of other panelists' affiliations and had never met them before. The National Council of Canadian Muslims is calling Dadani's treatment little more than a witch hunt. The advocacy group says the government should have stated earlier that the alias was disclosed during the appointment process. Previously, the government said that Dadani did not share his social media activity prior to his appointment. A court has ordered the Catholic Church to pay $104 million to survivors of abuse in Newfoundland, Canada. The amount is payable to the 290 survivors of abuse at the notorious Mount Cashel orphanage. The compensation aims to address trauma caused by decades of abuse, with funds primarily sourced from church property sales. Lawyer Jeff Budden represented over 200 victims. Budden describes the ruling as validating for victims who have fought for justice for decades. The church has raised $45 million, and efforts continue to secure additional funds. The Mount Cashel orphanage scandal surfaced in 1989. It revealed a disturbing history of abuse and subsequent cover-ups by church officials. The orphanage closed in 1990. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Muslim Network TV, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now, so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad. Assalamu alaikum.